You're listening to The Big Picture with Edwin Eisendrath on WCPT 820.
All right, everybody. Clara Jeffery is the award-winning editor-in-chief of the fabulous Mother Jones. As you all know, I am a big fan of Mother Jones. It's essential journalism always, and that makes it stand out even more in our era when so many formerly great news organizations have faltered. Clara, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me, Edwin.
Hey, I want to spend time talking about the piece you wrote on calling for soft secession. But before we get there, could we take a little bit of time to talk about journalism in this exceptional time?
Sure. It's a pretty depressing topic.
Well, yeah, it is, isn't it? But I had a great conversation, I want to say 2 weeks ago, with one of yours, Kara Butler. And I just can't imagine the conversations you must have with your team about what stories to pursue, what depth to pursue them, because honestly, the variety and the careful attention to ideas that, you know, month after month shows up in Mother Jones leaves the impression that you have a huge news staff.
I mean, it's not that huge. We have about 77 journalists, which is pretty big, but it's and we've grown over the years, so that's nice and that's great. But I think it's also we seem big because so many things have been cut back so terribly, or are being watered down or redirected away from investigative journalism, maybe towards a sort of MAGA-friendly, opinion-y kind of space. And so, it's I think we're doing great work, but it's also easier to stand out when there's less work being done overall, sadly. Yeah,
I mean, I think there's I ran the Chicago Sun-Times earlier in my life as its CEO, and I'm deeply familiar with the crushing burden on local news and familiar with what's happened to investigative reporting as well. They're both expensive and the markets are in an odd place, but people need this stuff. I think there's the chaos in the news business is also, I think, now an opportunity. I mean, if people can't count on the Washington Post or 60 Minutes anymore, but like young Americans never got into that habit and never did anyway, the transformation of news consumption, I don't know, maybe brutal for old journalism, but it's an opportunity for you, I think.
It's an opportunity in a lot of ways, and we are certainly doing a lot of experimentation. We've had a magazine since the beginning and an active daily site for, in a big way for more than a decade. Now we have radio shows, podcasts, and we do a lot of short video, and partially that's to meet audiences wherever they are and however they like to get their news and information. So I think that there is a lot of people are hungry for information. They're not always given great information, and they often only want information that confirms their own biases. So that's a sort of, I think, general information space challenge that we all face as Americans. Yep. But it is true that at the same time there is a lot of opportunity for things to make their mark. I think the financial problem that you're speaking to is that so much of journalism was underwritten, by advertising for so long. And the problem with the networks that we're seeing is like the news part of these giant corporations is not profitable. So there's sort of a mixed feeling of like, why should I be bothered with this pesky thing that isn't making me money? When I have Hollywood studios to take care of and, entertainment-based products. So, and so that's, I've long believed, even before this, like most recent crisis of journalism, that serious journalism was always going to be a matter of some combination of reader support and philanthropy. And, essentially nonprofit news was going to be what kind of survived this, because advertising no longer pays enough for news.
Yep.
To be missed. And that's what we're seeing. And, I think individual readers are stepping. I think Americans still don't really understand the sort of marketplace issues broadly, and they haven't been trained to sort of pay for journalism the way folks in other countries have, with higher subscription prices, or maybe there's state-sponsored media that's good and well endowed, or maybe it's just a storied brand that has gotten a loyal following over many years. But I think that's really we need to sort of fortify the ways in which people pay for journalism to get it out of the hands of corporations, because it's not in their financial interest. And if you run a corporation, that's ultimately what you care about.
Yep. We've certainly seen that. You helmed a merger between Mother Jones and Reveal. And I think there was recently a reorganization of leadership in the newsroom to meet the moment. Like, how are you thinking about, organizing to get you're not an opinion. You're not an opinion. But you're like this show is. I'm not a journalist. I'm married to one. I know the difference. But you guys do real journalism, real investigative journalism, and you sort of organize to meet the moment. What's the thinking about how you do this and grow?
Well, I mean, what we're trying to do is essentially, we do a lot. We have a lot of different kinds of journalism done in our shop, both in format and kind of length and all that. But with our sort of big investigations, whether it's, sort of a one-off or an area that we cover, emphatically over time, what we're now trying to do is to make sure it's not just like a one and done situation that we try and, make use of the whole animal, if you were. Like, we'll have magazine pieces and big web features, but also that goes into long-form radio documentary, even into long-form film documentary. We had a couple big documentary films come out in the last couple of years, one of which won an Emmy, the other which is on Netflix. Like, so, and so, and then also the radio shows that we do are, of course, both podcasts as well. So try and understand that, some people are just going to watch a short video. And if you can get them to watch that short video and maybe they get their news that way, great. And if they sort of scale up and get interested and read a long story or go listen to a podcast investigative interview, that's all great. We have to just kind of meet people where they are and get them intrigued by, what we're reporting on.
And you have a mission focus in what you're reporting on. I mean, I clicked on the food tab on your website, Clara, and almost invariably when I do that on other news sites, I get restaurant reviews, I get recipes, I get, sort of consumer friendly information about food. But you guys are wired differently. I mean, the stories included a crash course in Trump's betrayal of American soy farmers and stories about how you feed the planet and ourselves without destroying both. I just love that you guys know what you're about and your reporting doesn't lose its focus.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I think, our mission is, I don't have the exact wording in front of me, but it's to produce revelatory journalism that, seeks to make a better world, basically. And so we've long been very interested in sort of food system politics. I think right now with the tariff, the soybean piece that you mentioned, and we have a great short video about that, is, how crazy is it that by raising the tariff on many things, but including agricultural products, that caused the Chinese to say, like, okay, we're not going to buy soybeans from American farmers anymore. We'll buy them from Argentina. And so now Trump is both bailing out a sort of radical libertarian president of Argentina who crashed his government with a crazy scheme, crashed his economy with a crazy scheme, to the tune of $20 billion. Someone who also is very close with Scott Bessent and his hedge fund friends. And we're going to probably give some kind of bailout to our farmers. But so we're paying twice right. to prop up something that isn't even the market that the farmers, want to be in. This won't make them whole. It'll help, but it won't make them whole, and it won't set up their businesses for future success. So, I think we've interviewed a lot of people in that world, including farmers who, voted for Trump. This is not what they want, and it wasn't what they expected. And meanwhile, we're, good for the people of Argentina, I suppose, that we're helping to bail them out, but we're doing it to prop up a friend of Scott Bessent's buddies and a guy who crashed his economy by, putting it all on the, kind of over-indexing on crypto and all this kind of stuff.
Oh, well, listen, everybody, just from what you've heard, if you want to be informed about the world, you have to read Mother Jones. If you're concerned that the rest of America doesn't know what's going on, and that's part of the problem that we're facing, then you have to fund Mother Jones. So buy a subscription, you can contribute to it, because this is the kind of journalism you guys are always asking about. How are people in America going to know what's going on? You really got to do it. All right, Clara, thank you for that sort of sideline into journalism. Let's talk about your piece, which was really interesting, and I had some thoughts about it that I want to hear about. So you wrote this piece that about maybe it's time for soft secession. First, what does that mean? And then let's get into some of the details.
Yeah, soft secession is sort of a term. Another more academic-y term is uncooperative federalism. And it's basically what I'm arguing and pointing out, and that other people are arguing, is that the sort of MO of the Trump administration is to pick off things one by one, pick off a state, pick off a city, pick off a program. And there's been a real collective action problem, be it on the behalf of media companies or corporate law firms or universities or whatever. Everyone hopes they can just sort of maybe pay them off or let this blow over. And soft secession is really saying, no, we have to, the states that want to protect immigrants, to protect science, to protect, the sort of values that they hold, to protect clean energy and so forth, need to sort of band together to create both protective apparati to help them maintain what they want to do, but also, go on the offensive to, make the stakes of what's happening really clear. And I think there's a lot of different ways that this could be done, but at its base, and there are a lot of ways that this is already happening. So, for example, the vaccine compact that Washington, Oregon, California, and then Hawaii joined in. And there's another one, kind of in the New England cluster to create their own vaccine standards and protocols. There's pandemic and other public health emergency funding and planning that's kind of going along the lines. The attorneys general of blue states, even before Trump was elected, had started to really coordinate and organize what will we do, what will we face, and what will we do if he comes into office. And that has helped. They hit the ground running on several different fronts, and you sort of see some of the lawsuits that they've initiated have helped kind of slow the advance of what Trump's trying to do in a number of places. So it's both kind of describe, and I will say that your governor J.B. Pritzker and our governor Gavin Newsom both basically said, hey, Governors Association, which is this 100-plus-year-old kind of confederation of governors. If some of your members are going to send troops into our state over the objections of us, the executives of those states and the controllers, the commandants of our own National Guard, then we're going to leave this association. Like, let's not pretend that we're all kind of acting in a united way. If you're basically helping to invade our state,
it had an impact.
So once you and it did have an impact. The I believe he's from Oklahoma. I can't remember his name.
He is from Oklahoma, governor of Oklahoma.
Yep, the governor of Oklahoma. Basically was like, our association does not, back these efforts.
And by the way, for those of you who are listening, I know you probably know this. The governor of Oklahoma is not a Democrat.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
So this is like the kind of united front that blue cities and states can present. That I think makes the stakes clear of what's happening to the rest of the American public. I mean, Gavin Newsom kicked off our redistricting effort as a sort of protection against what Texas was doing at the, pretty much over the desires of the GOP leaders in Texas, by the way, that Trump wanted it, so they did it. And so California is pushing back and other states are, examining their own situations, but we should be doing this in a more of a united front. And I think what we see right now, it's pretty clear both Gavin Newsom and Lee Pritzker, are eyeing a presidential run. And so they're kind of twinning each other. But I think even more cooperation could be put forth, both in terms of policy and just in terms of rhetoric. So they got to go Avengers style on this and team up.
I mean, so they're governing things we could do. You point out in your piece that, California, Illinois, New York, they also have enormous other kinds of resources: agriculture, power, cultural power, technical. The tech industries are all in their homes, and if they could enlist the support of these people in their own states to help, could put enormous pressure. We also talked about not having pension fund investments in red states. And I mean, I'm thinking about the California Teachers Retirement Pension Fund. CalPERS, I think, is the biggest pension fund in the country. I mean, the enormous economic power the blue states wield it could be a huge weapon in this fight.
That's right. I mean, California alone is the world's fourth biggest economy. We're the fifth biggest agricultural producer in the world. We have Silicon Valley and Hollywood. Just a ton of natural resources, and we're enormous. But states, including Illinois and New York, and even smaller states have a lot of economic and cultural clout. And so it's really, how can that be leveraged? And one of the things I was trying to do is what authoritarians try and do is wear you down and exhaust you and depress you until you feel that it's all inevitable. And what can any one person do? What can any one state do? What can any one city do? And the answer through that is you have to team up with all of those other things to take the actions that you can. And one of which is just showing the American public what the hell is going on, which I think, the atrocities that are happening in Chicago, I don't pretend that all of America has woken up to that or has seen stuff that is not filtered through, Fox News or more inflammatory bubbles. But, that said, there have been dramatic kind of moves in the polls This is not popular. Joe Rogan spoke out against it yet again.
Yep.
And the Trump, there's some portion of his base that will ride or die with him no matter what, probably. I mean, honestly, literally no matter what. But that's not everybody, and that's not how he won. And that's just in the realm of people who voted. Yeah. I mean, there's also, way too many Americans who can vote who do not. And so it's waking folks like that up too. This is about, ever increasing inflation and energy costs. We're directing our utilities and our grid, which is already in real trouble, to AI data centers, and Americans' electricity prices have already gone through the roof a lot, but they're really going to go through the roof in the next few years because we just don't have enough infrastructure. And who's going to get first dibs on that electricity? Yep. Trump's crypto billionaire friends, or you. And so that's
we know the answer to that because they did it with internet bandwidth. They said you pay more, you get more. Yeah. So I read this piece and I had two thoughts I want to ask you about. One, it feels like, you used two terms to describe it in the beginning, soft secession and non-cooperation. It feels like Cold War to me. What you're doing is saying we in America are in a Cold War. Hopefully not a hot war, but we're in a Cold War across red and blue states, and we had better act like it. And I thought about that, and then I thought, okay, but the red states have been in that Cold War for a while and do think like it. I mean, I think about Texas, and they, when Joe Biden was president, they set their National Guard up on the river and said the federal government can't come near the river, the Rio Grande. And they bust tens of thousands of migrants, despite the fact that the government gives Texas money to deal with the migration issues at the border. They bust them up to Chicago and other cities. They have been engaged in exactly the things you're talking about for a long time. And we've pretended, oh, no, we're one country and we all should just get along.
Yeah, I think that's right. And of course, again, we are talking about elected leaders that are beholden to, either because they really do thrill to the policies of Trump, or they're just scared. They're literally physically afraid of what happens if they stand up to him, and they're afraid for re-election. The latter part, I don't understand at all. How can you betray your country so enormously? Just go get another job. All these people will find one. But so then it comes down to just this sort of collective belief system that they're all in, and that's sort of propped up by right-wing media, and they never really see much outside of that. I mean, I think Trump is literally being shown, either old or AI-generated videos by Stephen Miller and whomever else to keep him at a fever pitch, So that's there's a whole element to this. Like, who's really running the country right now is Americans.
Clara, I hear that from people, and I want to say I have no patience with it, because if Donald Trump were gone, all these people we asking about are they running the country would be gone too. So let's just find a way to get rid of Donald Trump, and these other people go away.
Yeah. I think that's true, but that said, he is the battleship that they are steering.
I agree with you, but he's the battleship that has to be sunk.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the right, so the rhetoric that is on Fox News, the rhetoric on the right for decades has been that the left in America is destroying the country. The left in America is evil. The left in America is grooming children in pizza parlors. The left in America will destroy your family. And so politicians on the left have treated us like the enemy. So they have been in this Cold War, Texas in particular leading it, but not alone, this hostility towards the rest of the country. And I think what your piece is saying is, okay, fellas, we recognize that you're treating us this way. And you know what? We've turned the other cheek. We've turned the other cheek. We've turned the other cheek. And again, this is not with guns, but, Lincoln said one side would make war and the other side, would accept it. And what you're saying is it's time to accept it and fight back.
Yeah, what I'm saying is it's time to recognize the power that we have to unite collectively in that power and to push back using all the economic, cultural, legal maneuvers that we can. And I think it's also just that a lot of Americans, and I hear this from my own friends, are like, everything is so terrible. I just can't. I got to unplug. I got to get away from the news. And I mean, I'm very, very jealous of that ability. But I get it. But that said, I don't think we cannot have a clear eye about what is happening. They're sending troops and mass battalions of highly weaponized federal agents to cities to try and provoke something that they can catch on camera to feed their right-wing media beast and to have a pretext to crack down even further, go even harder, do even worse things. And
yeah, I mean, I live in one of those cities. And what they've done here is so awful. You've seen the stories, rappelling from a Black Hawk helicopter into an apartment building, taking everybody in the apartment building out in the middle of the night, zip-tied, separating children from their parents, taking people out who were sleeping naked and taking them out naked into the streets. For what? Saying because they think there's a Tren de Agua person in this apartment building, which, of course, there's no proof of. They had no warrants to do it. They actually wrote the warrants when they were there. Or shooting a priest with pellet guns because he was praying near their facility, here.
They're throwing congressional candidates on the ground.
They're driving down neighborhood streets in Chicago and releasing tear gas canisters and driving away. This is just terrorizing a city. And it's confusing, right? Because Chicago's an enormous city, and this activity, even with the federal presence, isn't happening in most of the city. Most of the city's beautiful. The weather has been shockingly great. People have been out in the parks. They've been walking along the river. They've been going out to eat, dining on the street. And I think to myself, wow, Paris in 1942 was still a beautiful city. It's very hard for people to get their head around this coercive, autocratic violence can be happening in a place that is also largely calm and business as usual. And that is a metaphor for the whole country and the very kind of thing you want us to wake up from.
Yeah, and I think that that's true. And while I totally, people should go for a nice walk and, have dinner with their friends and all of that. I don't want to say we should just be living in a total sense of terror and drudgery. But that said, I think we basically need to realize how quickly these changes are happening.
Yes.
It took Viktor Orban many years to get to some of the things that Trump has already accomplished, including a pretty dramatic takeover of mainstream media. We are only 9 months into this, and so much has been done already. And I think one of the things that I just kind of want to say to people is, yes, everybody needs to plan for the midterms and organize for the midterms and do all of that. But the midterms and the markets are not going to save us. We can't await them. It could be that this AI stuff holds up the actual stock market, but we know ordinary people are not getting the benefits of most of that. That's, that's.
And when healthcare cuts happen, it's going to be brutal.
No, and I think, there's been a lot of it. There's been an endless discussion about whether the Democrats should have gone bigger with their demands or, not. But I do think that this moment has really, and thank you, Marjorie Taylor Greene, I think that this moment has really started to get people to be like, oh, wait, my healthcare costs are going to double in the next few months. Even if you're not on the ACA or you're not being cut from Medicare, the effect is pushed through the entire system.
Yeah.
Because when those costs are borne by whatever ends up bearing them, it ends up on the balance sheets of every American household, every American company. I mean, I'll tell you, like last year, Mother Jones and the Center for Investigative Reporting had a 17% increase in our healthcare costs, and we have very generous benefits for people. This year, we're projecting a 20% increase. It's been at least
unsustainable.
12%. It's unsustainable. And it's this weird situation where the failure of the American healthcare system is, of course, being pushed on to individual households, but it's also being pushed into like every business where the businesses end up being the bad guys for a system they don't really control. They have to administer all this crazy paperwork.
I don't like it.
It's nobody likes it. Doctors don't like it. No. Hospitals don't like it. Like, who likes this?
There's some insurance companies that are perfectly happy.
I guess. Some insurance companies, I guess. But it's an unsustainable system.
Well, I want to go back. You said, this has happened so very quickly, so much faster than Orban's efforts in Hungary. And I want to ask about that because I think maybe that's not how I see it. I think we are just waking up to, and Hillary was right when she said there's a vast right-wing conspiracy. I think, you have a Powell memo in 1972 that creates all these groups like the Heritage Foundation. And they've been working diligently for a long time. John Roberts, this is his 20th year on the court, and undoing the Voting Rights Act is what he's worked at tirelessly on the court, and he's almost succeeded, putting all that dark money into politics with Citizens United. This predates Trump. I mean, Trump couldn't have happened if this attack on our democracy hadn't been going on longer than I think we're ready to realize.
I think that's right. The right wing has always been very organized and disciplined about the things that it wants to accomplish. Trump is anything but organized and disciplined, but he came along and activated people's anger and rage and emotion, and that kind of combined with the Rust Vote, Project 2020, Heritage Foundation people who are, recognize the moment for what it is, that they can, gain a lot of yardage for what they want. And what they want is pretty horrifying to most Americans, not just lefties.
No, everybody.
People do not actually want a lot of what they're selling. And that's what you see now. They're like, well, I really just thought he would go after, the gang members. I mean, he was very clear that it was going to be beyond that in certain settings. But if you're not someone who, has to slog through a Trump speech or two a day, you're maybe don't pick up on that, or you're maybe
he said, I don't know who Project 2025 is. Never heard of them. Maybe there's some good ideas. I don't know if I like them. And then he went ahead and has implemented all of them.
Right. And I think that two-step that he does, I don't know. You see Mike Johnson doing that now about Trump. I don't know. I didn't see that press conference. I didn't hear about that Pete Hegseth speech. It's like, well, what who's doing your job then? If you're not aware of the biggest news events of the day, so there's just this sort of we can just blatantly lie. And, I think parts of the media did a real disservice of sort of we don't know that. He says he's not going to do Project 2025. It's well, this was his head of the Office of Management and Budget. Who is writing this, with all these other people who worked in or for Trump during the first term. These are the people who are coming back. So it's pretty obvious. You don't need to have a a memo, or in this day and age, it would be a stray DM or a leaked signal chat or whatever to see what's before your own eyes. And I think that kind of the kind of somewhat old-fashioned rules that still, I think, afflict parts of journalism about, like, just tell people what is actually happening, not what politicians say is happening.
That is so important. I mean,
let us down.
There are a couple things that threw me during the campaign. And one was all this reporting that Donald Trump's going to Detroit to meet with union members, right? Like, he had a week of news about that, which he never was going to do. Mm-hmm. I mean, why report on what he says when you know what he says is not true? And then the New York Times say, seriously compare Kamala Harris's housing policy with Donald Trump's. And Donald Trump's housing policy was deport everybody because that'll lower the demand for housing. That's not a housing policy. That's just insane. And it got reported as if it was not insane. I didn't even know how to think about that.
Well, also, they've deported a lot of people. Does anybody housing prices gone down? No, because we don't have inventory. We haven't built nearly enough in the past decade, and we need to build denser housing on transit corridors in particular, but we need to build housing of all kinds. And
yep.
And there's some real left denialism on that, too. You'll find a lot of lefties who are like, well, if we just something about landlords was better, there's actually enough housing. And it's like, no, there's some bad landlords, to be sure, but
right.
We just need more housing.
We need more housing. And we have a problem on the left with capitalism, and there are lots of good critiques of modern capitalism, but developers aren't going to build housing for free. And we have to find a way to live with that. So, yeah.
That's right. I mean, you can't just, I think there's a big mistake. This is one of my areas of obsession. There's a big mistake when people are like, listen, if we just had the socialist style housing of Vienna, Austria. And it's like, okay, so first we need a complete overhaul of Congress and a different president. And all these other things would have to happen. Now you should work for those things to happen, but you cannot wait for 2 decades for something like that to maybe happen, to fix the problem that, in addition to healthcare, is the biggest strain on Americans' budgets, is housing costs. And it's ever worse for young people who feel bereft at the idea of ever, not just like having a house in the suburbs type thing, but just really any kind of housing security. And so, that's something we need to attack on every possible level. And state and local governments can do a lot there, too. And that's, kind of the other part of the sort of soft secession thing is states and cities have power. They can make things happen. Can they make everything the federal government makes happen? No, not the way things are set up now. But they can do more to get the policies that need to happen in place, and to be working, to not to sort of await the largesse of the federal government.
Do you think in this moment, you folks in California, people in blue states generally, would be better off if the Republicans, if we just said, you're right, you know what, the federal government should just be worried about our self-defense. They should be an army, and not much else, and we'll take care of the rest in the states. You can charge us only for the army, and we're not going to pay another dollar into the federal government, because California and Illinois and New York, with the exception of Texas, really, all of the states that are above the median in what they give to Washington, in other words, they give more than they get back, are these big blue states. And this would be an enormous difficulty for all of the red states that are takers, to use their language. They get a lot more back than they pay the federal government. Should we just keep that money ourselves and just say, you know what, we're done? This federal experiment isn't going to work. We'll do it differently in our states and your states. We'll defend ourselves together. But other than that, you're on your own.
I mean, I think there's sort of two levels of that. I think one, they should for sure point it out at every possible juncture, and not let this sort of propaganda from red states that's sort of like, that it's blue states that are costing the country money. That's just not true.
It's absolutely not true by any measure. We're the economic engines. So is Texas, in fairness. But economic engines in the country.
Economic engines, cultural engines, innovation engines, which is not to malign red states. And I think the kind of conundrum that Democrats are always in is that, they believe in sort of social welfare programs and wanting to help people, including wanting to help people in red states. It's like, please let us, expand Medicare for your people. And Medicaid, sorry. And I think that's in part what's interesting about this healthcare fight right now, because these ACA increases and the Medicaid withering will hit red states worse.
Brutally. But they don't know they're in the ACA because it was rebranded as like Missouri Care.
Right. Kentucky Care or whatever. Care. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, but they will be hit worse. And I think this is because it is, enrollment season, people are logging on to say like, okay, should I, futz around the edges of my plan? And they're like, oh my God, my plan is going to be double or triple the cost. Like most people cannot afford those kind of increases, they'll, at all. Most people are, Americans are, 40% of Americans don't even have $500 saved up for an emergency. I mean,
Medicare costs are going up too. It's not just Medicaid.
Yep.
I mean, it's really, it's really going to be a wake-up call. And I know when they passed the big ugly bill, they thought they were putting off the worst of it till after the midterms, and they are. But in fact, there's plenty of bad coming now.
Yes, there's plenty of bad coming now, and. So I think I do think that the sort of defection from Marjorie Taylor Greene on this front is super.
Canary in a coal mine.
Canary in a coal mine. And also just that she's doing what literally every other family and household is doing. She's like, wait a minute, my adult kids are going to see their premiums double. And I don't like that. Like we don't have the money to pay for that.
Just one last thought on this, because we are running low on time. This conversation has had the feeling that there are red states and blue states, and they're solidly red and solidly blue. But your state in California has more Republicans in it than any state in the country except Texas. And Texas gave, an enormous amount of Democratic votes to Kamala Harris, more than most other blue states. So, there's this, we haven't segregated ourselves into these states completely yet, particularly the big ones. So to be forced to be at civil war is really going to be painful.
That's right. And I will say that this just speaks to the absolute need to get like if there were no electoral college, Trump would not be behaving this way, right? Because he would be elected by the popular vote and evenly distributed, and the chips would fall where they fall. But these policies are hurting Republicans in California, Republicans in Illinois, Republicans in Chicago. I mean, there's some. I've got family members who probably fit that description.
Yeah.
And so we're having kind of all these levels of minority rule. Like California has 67 times the population of Wyoming, but the same number of senators. Like,
that's a whole. You and I have to do a separate show on that topic.
Okay, we'll do a separate show and all that, but it is related. The sort of the compromises that we made at the founding, the compromises that led California to be admitted to the Union as a free state, while other states were, like all these sort of compromises that were made that are really coming to a fore right now in a lot of ways, and some of them are over 200 years old. And they're just not wearing well.
That's got to be our last word because we've run out of time. Clara, your work at Mother Jones is awesome. Everybody listening, for gosh sake, support Mother Jones. It's just fabulous. And it's been around since the Civil War, doing great work. Thank you so much.
Well, only since the 70s, but we're...
No, really? I thought it was founded before. It was founded in the 70s?
No. Yeah, and the post-Watergate, like a lot of good...
post-Watergate, sorry. That wrong tragedy in my head. You're absolutely right. Yeah. Thank you so much
for having me, Edwin.
You bet.
Appreciate it. Bye-bye. Bye.